Today, I'd like to talk about humility. This week, we have celebrated in the Christian calendar something called Ash Wednesday. It's marking that season of Christian reflection called Lent. It kicks it off. So you may, in some traditions, remember getting ashes on your forehead. You've certainly seen others who have done it. The president had ashes on his forehead, so it's a common ritual. And when the ashes are put on you, the verse from Genesis that we read today is read. You came from dust, and so to dust you will return. So what is all that supposed to be referring to? Well, the ashes serve as a reminder of the shortness of our life, the importance of taking each day seriously, and it's a call for us to humble ourselves as we prepare for Easter. So why humility? Why is humility so important? Humility may be one of the most important spiritual practices, if not the most important spiritual practice, that no one really understands. And humility is very misunderstood. So I'm going to start by saying what it's not. First of all, humility sounds a lot like humiliation, right? Similar background on the words, but very different meanings. Humiliation is when you have a painful loss, painful attack on your dignity. Humility has nothing to do with it. Humility means a modest opinion of your importance in the world, just a way of checking in on yourself. One of those is done to you, and one is something you can do yourself. They're very different, but they're confused. So a lot of people see humility as being sort of sheepish or just kind of keeping your head down. Humility also has another bizarre connection that I've noticed online. Our culture measures success in terms of money and celebrity, and it's very natural for the rising generation who are using social media to want to tell about their success, even brag about it. But the way that many of them do, at least the people I've worked with in the past, maybe this is less true, is something they call a humble brag. And I keep reading their post, and they say, it goes something like this. It says, I'm humbled to be chosen as the next, and then fill in the blank, whatever job title they've got, or at a consulting firm, or that I'm 30 under 30 or 40 under 40. But it's this very strange thing because it's a humble brag. It's just the opposite of being humble. It's bragging. So that's another strange way that humility is misunderstood. I'm not against people celebrating your life milestones. One of the best things in life is to have a friend that you can really brag to and know that you can share your successes. It's great. I hope this is a community where you can share your successes. But to begin by saying, I'm humbled by my greatness is not getting it right. So beware of the humble brag. The other confusing thing is that it's often seen, humility is seen as an act of cowardness, passivity. Maybe you've heard this expression. It's an old expression, but you'll have to eat humble pie. And that describes someone being forced to admit they were wrong. Who wants to be associated with that kind of humility? Forced apologies? Humble pie does not really define humility either. So there's a lot of misconceptions about humility. It's very misunderstood. And I'm arguing today that far from being weak, humility is a superpower. It's definitely a spiritual superpower. Humility is the ability in a person to really listen to others. It's the ability to look within yourself and see your weaknesses, honestly. People who are humble do not have inflated views of themselves. When you meet a person who's truly humble, they don't need to brag. They're comfortable in their own skin. They don't need to win you over. Humble people I find in meetings are usually the last to speak. And one of the best traits of a humble person is they are curious. Humble people have done a deep assessment of themselves. And knowing who they are, they're less judgmental Because the more you know yourself and really know yourself, you know your faults. And when you know your faults, you become much less judgmental of others. When you see someone else who's failing, you say to yourself, there, but by the grace of God go I. It could be me. Humble people are those who go through life's struggles, recognizing they're not in control, but growing from the experience. They recognize control is an illusion. We don't know what tomorrow brings. We trust God to just open the next door. Beyond that, we remain humble. Another great example of a humble person is it's that person who, when you're with them, will build up somebody not in the room. They'll say something positive about somebody else and build them up. Humility is a key spiritual principle in the Christian faith. And that's why Jesus' teachings today in the Beatitudes is really a reversal of the way the world looks at success, verse after verse. And that one verse, blessed are the humble or the meek, they shall inherit the earth. Jesus is flipping the image that those who have earthly power and seek earthly power will win out. Jesus is saying these things will be flipped. Those who are humble, those who are kind, will win out in the long run, if not in our short lives. Jesus is teaching a counter lesson. You cannot answer evil with evil if you want to inherit the earth. Only light can beat out darkness. Only humility can destroy our own narcissism. Swedenborg, in his comments, describes the power of humility in a helpful way. He basically says that when we live in arrogance and selfishness, we're essentially blocking God's love from flowing into us. Why is that? Why can't we get that energy from God? It's because when we have narcissism or deep selfishness, when we lack humility, we have all the answers. We don't need God. We are masters of the universe. We don't need God. We don't need faith. We don't need other people. We have our own money, our own retirement fund. We're all set. We don't need others. We have it all together. And with that attitude, we're blocking out the sunlight of God to warm our heart. We don't develop the ability to admit we are wrong. We are furious when we're criticized or challenged. And we mock others as not as successful as us. So humility, it turns out, is one of the most powerful traits we can possibly develop in our lives. And here's how it works. First, it allows us to be secure in ourselves. And that allows us to look at ourselves honestly, warts included. Only when we can look at ourselves honestly can we see what needs to be changed. Only when we see what needs to be changed can we begin to change. And only when we change can we grow to be a better person. No humility, no growth. And if we are not growing spiritually, we are dying spiritually. Humility is that ability to state obvious truth that we don't know what we don't know. It's the ability to hear criticism and decide if it's coming from love and concern, it's not an attack. The humble will inherit the earth is Jesus' radical message that we can live a life full of beauty, love, and truth-seeking to be useful and not be dominated in this world. Instead, we humble ourselves to be, as Jesus described, like little children, who he tells us will inherit the kingdom of heaven. People who are humble are bridge builders. They are peacemakers. But we also recognize people who lack humility. People who are arrogant, insecure, and selfish. Again, we have all those parts within ourselves. Today, in the world, we're experiencing what happens to a person subsumed by arrogance, insecurity, selfishness. In the movements by Vladimir Putin, we see the opposite of humility and the deadly consequences. We see self-love ruling a person's life, seeking power and dominion over others. Not only can't they reflect on themselves, but they must punish critics. They must arrest other opinions. They live in constant fear. Arrogance, domination, and no ability to self-reflect create people who live in constant stress and anxiety here on earth. But it's not just Putin. Each of us battles with varying degrees this self-love and a desire to be in control over others. Humility is just the first step in a spiritual life of self-awareness. It grants us inner peace and contentment. Humble people can be calm in this crazy world, trusting in God. This Lent, we can seek opportunities in our own life to become more humble and less self-centered. Look for the opportunities. When someone disagrees with you, we can be more curious. When people are offering criticism, we can stop to hear what we can learn. When anxiety about our future arises, we can trust that God is working in our life. When we see bullies, we can fight for the underdog. When we speak for others, we build them up. From dust you came into the world, and dust you shall return. Humility is the greatest of all spiritual powers, and this Lent we can use it as an opportunity to become more humble, less self-centered. And in doing so, we are building peace in our lives, peace in the lives of those we meet, and peace in the world. Do this, and we will inherit this blessing. Blessed are the humble, they shall inherit the earth. Amen.